All right, I think we're live.
Okay.
So, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm a little tired today, so.
I'm going to turn the volume up just a little bit, but you're going to have to, because of the positioning of the microphone, you have to give us a little bit more, even though you're tired. Because otherwise, like, the birds will be louder than you, and we can't have that. So,
We have some really noisy birds out there.
yeah. Well, it feels like it might be springtime out there. It's kind of confusing because it was cold, and now it's like warm again. So,
It's Texas for you.
yeah. So, all right. Well, today we are celebrating the launch of The Twisted Tree.
The
It's
Twisted Tree.
the third book in the Pen Files series, coming after The Legend of Woman Hollering Creek and
The Ghosts
the Ghost of Kingston Estate. Yeah, it took me a second. Both were really fun books, but we've heard that this third one is a favorite in the series so far.
Yeah.
Gotten that feedback, right? So, well, do you want to take us through what we're going to be doing today during this celebration?
Yeah. So we're going to have a little bit of a time where I talk about the book, and then I'm going to share some of my favorite fall treat recipes, which I will also post in the comments where we're streaming this, so that you can try them out if you would like. And then I'm going to do a short reading from the book. And then I think we'll probably open it up for... No, we should probably do the violin challenge first, and then we can open up for Q&A if people have any additional questions. So, one note, I have never played the violin before, have never even picked one up. My great-grandmother was a really, really good violin player, but I did not get that gene. I played the clarinet in high school, middle school, high school, and college. And then I also play the bass guitar. So I just thought, well, how hard can it be?
How hard can it be to pick up an instrument you've never played before?
Yeah.
That doesn't have, unlike a bass guitar, most bass guitars, doesn't have any frets.
Yeah.
Uses a completely different mechanic for...
Yeah, the bow.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, which we can get into, but the reason for that is the main character of The Twisted Tree, The Ghost of Kingston Estate, and The Legend of Woman Hollering Creek is a violin player. So this isn't just a random...
I just, yeah.
I just decided to pick up a violin.
Throughout the stream, if you have questions, feel free to leave your questions in the comments wherever you're watching this, whether that's on Facebook or YouTube. We'll be able to see those, and we can bring those in so during the Q&A time. So please feel free to drop those questions in there.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So what are we doing first again?
The questions about the book.
Yep. Okay. All right. So obviously the first question is, tell us a little bit about this book.
Well, like you said, it is the third in the Pen Files series, which is a scary story series that I kind of started writing because my kids wanted some scary stories. So I came up with some characters who are kind of amateur ghost hunters. And The Twisted Tree is the third one in this, and it's kind of a continuation of Julian is the main character. It's a continuation of his story and kind of coming of age. And he is a very reluctant ghost hunter. He does not like ghosts. He doesn't consider himself brave. And he just keeps happening upon ghosts that are in his path, and he's not very happy about that. So The Twisted Tree is about this tree that they have to pass as they bike on their way to school. And they start to wonder if it's haunted. And then there are some signs that maybe it is haunted. And then at the same time, Julian is having some trouble. He has a violin solo in his first violin concert, and he's having some trouble believing in himself, and so he keeps messing it up. and he goes into some practice rooms in the orchestra room, and there is a ghost there as well. So it's kind of like, he has to face multiple fears in this book, which is a lot of fun. He's a humorous character too, because he just really does not believe in himself. Mm-hmm. So it's very cute.
I think many of us know people or are people who struggle with believing in themselves.
I mean, I put a little of me in him too.
Yeah.
So
I have a question about this being the third book in the series. If someone were interested, maybe they hadn't read the other two books, is this a story they could pick up and read and not need as much of the background from the other two books and still feel
yeah, each one kind of stands on its own because they're battling different ghosts. So the only thing that's happening, series are complicated anyway. You have to kind of build on the same emotional arc and stuff like that, but the main thing that's building is they're getting a little more competent at fighting the ghosts. So and that, so they'll be a little bit better at it in this one than any of the previous two. But other than that, I do explain some of the things that have happened in the other books too. So might be spoilers for the other books, but they'll still be fun to read.
Yeah.
So,
you wrote 20 books for the Farendale series, which was fairy tale retellings. Your traditionally published books include a fantasy book and a book in verse that was kind of historical fiction, and then your most recent one, The First Magnificent Summer, and these stories, the pen file stories, kind of stand out a little bit because they're spooky. They're like spooky stories. Why spooky stories?
Well, when I visit schools and I have a lot of kids, the kids are always saying they love scary stories. So I don't know. I don't like only writing one thing, I guess. My brain, the way that my brain works is it has a million different ideas, and all of them feel essential and necessary. So I think what originally sparked the spooky series is my kids just really wanted a scary story, and so I was like, well, we live in San Antonio. There are a lot of haunted places here, and I took some of those in The Legend of Woman Hollering Creek and created, ghost stories out of one particular place that is really spooky here in San Antonio. So, and I think as a kid, I loved reading all kinds of things. But right around this time of year, I still feel it as an adult, but I always wanted to read as many scary stories as I could. I don't know if it's because the Halloween season and you're like in this mood for spookiness. So that kind of sparked me too, because I think I got the idea for it right as we were going into NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, in November. And it was October, and I was like, oh, I really want to write a scary story. And so, it came about at that time. So
the settings, you talked a little bit about, being in San Antonio, but specifically, when you get into the settings in the other two books, there are these distinct places that kind of become characters of their own. For this book, why a school and a haunted tree?
So when I was in elementary school, there was a stage area where we had to do like our school performances and stuff. And then there was like an attic. I'm not super clear on the details, but I remember there being like a staircase where we had to go up to this attic. And it was like the creepiest thing ever. And everybody, like nobody wanted to go there. But I remember we had to go there in kindergarten because our kindergarten teacher always did this profile picture thing where she would shine a light behind us and she'd trace our profile and then she'd give it to our parents, which my mom still has. And it was like so creepy being in that room. So for this one, I just thought schools are kind of creepy. Like when when there's nobody
Especially
around.
older
Yeah,
schools.
older schools. And I always went to older schools. And when there's, when all the students are there, it's not as creepy. But but then when the halls are empty, you're like, this is a really old place. There are probably all kinds of, I don't know, ghosts in here, kids and their imaginations. And I just remember as a kid, we would tell spooky stories about that attic all the time. So I just thought, having something be in a school, and it also plays into Julian is having trouble in orchestra, and then he's dealing with a ghost in the orchestra room. It was just a nice parallel. And then as far as the tree is concerned, when we're driving toward my parents' house, which is like close to Victoria, Texas, there are all kinds of these trees that kind of look like I don't even know how to describe them. It's like they have fingers and hands and no leaves. And every time I pass those trees, I'm like, there's got to be some kind of story. Like I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but there's got to be some kind of spooky story related to that tree. So that kind of got me started. And then a lot of times in the mornings, when I'm out for runs and stuff, trees are spooky things. Like I'll run past some and they're cold spots, and like in ghost lore, when you pass cold spots, it's supposed to be haunted activity. So the imagination just gets going, and yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, and so was that also, I guess, choosing between the settings, the title of the book, The Twisted Tree. What was the reason for focusing on that particular setting over like the school or some other aspect of the book?
I think because the tree, it's able, like you said, it's able to become almost like a character in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But the school, it's just this one room. And, thinking of a title, I felt like The Twisted Tree was a little more compelling than something like The Haunted Schoolhouse or whatever. It seemed like a more interesting title. So, but I think, I don't know. I guess that's kind of why I decided to go with the tree as the title. There's a lot that happens at the tree. So, yeah. Without giving any spoilers away, there's a lot that happens there. So, with, like a convergence of sorts. So,
is it spoilers to tell us? So we've got Julian and Bella are the main characters. And then who are some of the other characters that come along for the ride?
So Julian has two friends who are twins, Chelsea and Chase.
Okay.
So they're all they're like a Goonies sort of, clique. Chelsea really loves true crime, so she's kind of hilarious. Bella loves ghost hunting. Julian is kind of a scaredy cat, and so is Chase. But Chase really loves insects. He's like interested in becoming an entomologist when he grows up. So
that's funny.
So they're all like really quirky and interesting characters.
Awesome. And what about? Can you tell us anything about the ghosts without giving too much away?
I think people would have to read to find out about the ghosts.
What is your favorite scene from the story?
I think I really love, so Julian and Bella are brother and sister. Julian's in 6th grade and Bella is in 5th grade. And I just really love all of the scenes between them because the way that there's one particular one actually where Bella is kind of always outsmarting Julian. So because he kind of trusts her. He's not a natural leader. She's kind of the like go into something head first, and she pulls him along with her. But there is a scene, I'm not going to read this one today, but there is a scene where he always has to start dinner because their parents work, and when they come home, they have casserole dinners together. And he's annoyed because he's always having to start it, and they're supposed to like trade off. So he tries to like get her to sign a contract where she will start dinner sometimes, and she completely outsmarts him on it. And I love the dynamic between them. Like they're good friends, but they're also, how siblings are when they fight and they're like their worst enemies.
A
And
little bit adversarial.
yeah. So it's always fun when I get to put them together.
What was kind of the, because I know for a lot of your characters, they're based off of things that are true about yourself or people you know. What was some of the inspiration behind the character of Julian with all of his quirks and that kind of thing?
I think he's kind of a mashup of like I wouldn't say necessarily me, but a lot of our children, and in the sense of being a little bit afraid to do certain things or embarrass himself in public, being more cautious. I feel like a lot of main characters know everything and they know who they are, and I was never that kind of kid. I was always trying to figure out, like, where do I belong? Who am I? And so I really wanted for him to be going on that journey as well, like trying to figure out, he sees Bella, who seems to know everything. She seems to know exactly who she is, and he's like, why is life so confusing for me, And I think there are a lot of kids out there like that who really identify with not feeling brave enough to do something or not feeling like they're capable of doing something. And I really wanted to encompass that in this character who will find out as he goes along that he is braver and stronger than he thinks.
That's awesome. So speaking of, that kind of struggle, he's throughout the book, he's afraid of failing at his violin solo. And that's kind of one of the driving things. Is there anything in your past that you were afraid of failing at, like whether it was an instrument or...
I mean, so many things, right? We're all afraid of failing at something. I think, the clarinet probably comes closest. I had a lot of solos, and there's a lot of pressure on you when you have something that's just you in a group of people, because then it's like all eyes are on you. If you mess up, everybody knows. If you're just in a, we just went to a band concert, I guess on Thursday, and I played the clarinet, which is like a squeaky instrument if you're not all that great at it. But when you're in the whole section, you can't know who was the squeaker and who wasn't. But when you're playing by yourself, if you squeak, everybody knows. So I remember as a kid, feeling that pressure and feeling afraid that I would fail at something like that. And I think probably everything new that I've attempted, there has been that little tiny bit of fear that it would go wrong and I would embarrass myself. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to think about, well, what is the worst that can happen when you embarrass yourself, though? Like, is it going to be... And he actually has to go through this with his therapist in this book. She's like, what does it mean if you embarrass yourself in front of everybody? Like, are people just going to stop loving you? Or, because I think sometimes when we're kids, we think that's like the worst thing that can happen. And it's going to like embarrass everybody around us. Our family's going to be embarrassed and we're going to be set out of the group, and, because we all want a place to belong. So I don't know if that even answers the question, but I guess
it does, yeah.
I would just say, like, every single thing I've ever done, there's been that little tiny fear.
Like, don't mess this up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has there been a time that you can remember where you did mess up and embarrass yourself and had to work through that?
Yeah, bad decisions. And I'm thinking of, things in college when I would choose to do something. And then I remember the first, I was an all-A student in high school. And I remember the first B I got, and I sobbed because it was so important to me. And I thought that I would just be kicked out and my life was over. And I was only a freshman, but still, like, it was a huge deal. It sounds like a small deal, but I also, like, I kind of went over all of the choices that I had made instead of studying for this test. And it was kind of traumatic. But
You poor thing. I'm just kidding. Sorry, that was insensitive.
no, I think what failure can teach you, though, because I remember specifically after that test it was only a B, like, it wasn't even that bad. But I remember going back to my dorm and trying to figure out how can I best study for history so that I never make a B again, and it from there on out, like, I figured out a way to study to where I never made another B. So I think failure can also teach us how to go forward and how to be successful, So it is very advantageous, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing. We don't feel like it at the time, but that wasn't like a public embarrassment, I guess. That was more of a private one. But I was on academic scholarship at college, and so it could have had big repercussions, So,
Yeah.
and that would have, I think in my head, that was like, if I fail at college, I was valedictorian in my high school, and I was voted most likely to succeed, and those were like big pressures going into college.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like everybody from my hometown is looking at me and is expecting great things, and if I, like, lose the scholarship, I remember thinking those things, if I lose this scholarship, that's humiliating,
Yeah.
that's a big deal. So anyway, that's just one. There are lots.
So there's a clear connection between this idea in the book of the fear of failure and your own personal experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any significant connections between, I guess, the encounters they have with the ghosts? Could that be like metaphorical for something, or was it just that you needed ghosts to be kind of, something to drive the story along?
Yeah, I mean, the ghosts are more something to drive the story along, but I do think that having the ghost in the orchestra room, it wasn't like an intentional thing, but writers are always like, whenever choices are made in stories, looking back, you're like, oh yeah, my brain was like connecting that metaphor. So having a ghost in the orchestra room, where it's this place where he is really struggling with, can I be successful? And then he has to fight a ghost and doesn't ever feel competent doing that either. So it's like he has to really face his limitations and realize that he doesn't have to be alone in facing any of that, even a solo. Like, you're not alone when you face the embarrassment or the failure of a solo. So
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's a lot to love about this book in terms of the kind of lessons and ideas, but it's also, it's a great story. We're getting to listen to it kind of early because you're sharing it with.
Yeah, I always read it to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're a great focus group, so
Yeah.
I always clock when they, like, laugh out loud about something, or give a little snicker.
Or if they tune out, which doesn't happen
Yeah.
very often. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions,
Okay.
but we're just leaving the comments open. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in there, and we'll have our Q&A time a little bit later on.
Yeah.
So what do we have next?
Next, I was going to share the recipes with everybody. I have 3 recipes. So I was just going to read them, but then I can...
Yeah, and can you tell us about where these recipes come from?
Yes, I was going to do that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So every summer, my sons and I do a summer baking thing together. And our favorite cookbooks, all these recipes come from these favorite cookbooks, which are America's Test Kitchen puts out these wonderful cookbooks. One of them is called The Perfect Cookie, one is called The Perfect Pie, and one is called The Perfect Cake. So I have one recipe from each of those, which are some of my fall favorites. So my absolute favorite cookie, probably all year round, really, but especially this time of year, snickerdoodles. So here is, I've kind of made some modifications here too, because we use a little bit different ingredients just to, make things a little healthier, and it's still really good. So here is the snickerdoodles recipe. This makes 24 cookies. So we use 2.5 cups of whole wheat flour, 2 teaspoons cream of tartar or tartar. I don't know how to pronounce that actually.
I don't know
Yeah.
either.
So
yeah. Well,
you get that.
tartar sounds more fun to say.
Yeah, tartar. 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter, softened, 8 tablespoons of palm oil shortening, 1.5 cups of sugar, plus 1/4 cup for rolling, 2 large eggs, and 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. So you heat the oven to 375, whisk the flour, cream of tartar, baking soda, and salt.
Tartar. Sorry.
Use a stand mixer to beat the butter, shortening, and 1.5 cups of sugar on medium speed until the mixture is pale and fluffy, about 3 minutes. Add the eggs one at a time and beat the mixture until incorporated, about 30 seconds. Reduce the speed to low and slowly add the flour mixture until combined, about 30 seconds. Now these times on here really vary. Sometimes I've seen them say like 30 seconds or a minute and it's taken like 5. So just, understand that. Give the dough a final stir by hand to ensure that no flour pockets remain. Then you can combine the remaining 1/4 cup of sugar and cinnamon in a shallow dish. Working with 2 tablespoons of dough at a time, you roll it into balls, then roll it in the sugar to coat, and put it about 2 inches apart on the baking sheet.
This is about the time I sneak in and start grabbing them, just to sample.
It's not fair either because this is my favorite cookie, so stay away.
Sorry.
And then you bake the cookies until the edges are just set and beginning to brown, but there should be like a few cracks in the middle because you want it a little bit gooey in the middle but crispy on the outside. So that's what you've got. I do have a modification here to make them vegan because we have done that as well, and they're very, very good. So you can substitute an extra 8 tablespoons of palm oil shortening for the butter, and then substitute 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed plus 1.5 tablespoons of water for every egg that it calls for. So that would be 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed and 3 tablespoons of water. And what you'll do is you'll mix that and you'll let it sit for a little bit, and then you'll pour it in as the egg mixture. So those are very, very good, and sometimes I do that even if we don't have eggs. So the next recipe I want to share is a chocolate cream pie, which is one of our favorites for Thanksgiving. It's very rich, so it serves about 8 people, but I've actually found that the pieces are very thick. So you might want to go with 16 people because cut them smaller. I can't finish a whole piece.
It's very rich.
Yeah. I mean, you can finish a whole piece, but I don't know. Yeah, you'll hear from the ingredients. It's very rich. So first you would want to do the chocolate cookie crust, which it's a 9-inch crust. We use 16 JoJo's, which is the equivalent of Oreos. It's just the Trader Joe's brand. So 16 JoJo's. Plus 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter that is melted and cooled. And you'll mix that together in, we usually use a, what is it called? Oh my gosh. Oh, a food processor. We use a food processor. I'll pulse it like 15 times. And that'll make it really nice and gooey. And then you put it in the pie pan. Use the back of I usually use a 1 cup measuring cup. And you kind of, pat it down. put it up against the sides, and then you bake it for, let me just see. You heat the oven to 325 and you bake it for about, oh no, that's not right. Bake it for about 13 to 18 minutes. So I think I usually do about 15, and that's just about right. And it'll make your house smell like baking cookies. Like, it's really good. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where our kids will be upstairs and I'll be baking the crust and they all come down like, what are you making? Because they can smell it. All right, so after that, I usually do or as it's baking, actually, I'll do the middle. And here's how you do the middle. 2.5 cups of half and half. By the way, I have not made this vegan, so I haven't figured out how to have the proper substitutions, but I'm working on it. So 1/3 cup of sugar divided, a pinch of table salt, 6 large egg yolks, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter cut into 6 pieces, 6 ounces of semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate chopped fine, 1 ounce of unsweetened chocolate chopped fine, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So this is, the middle of the pie is like a pudding. You can actually make chocolate pudding with those exact ingredients. So bring the half and half, 3 tablespoons of sugar and salt to simmer in a medium saucepan over medium heat, stirring occasionally. Whisk the egg yolks, cornstarch, and remaining sugar in a bowl until smooth. Slowly whisk 1 cup of warm half and half mixture into the yolk mixture to temper. Then slowly whisk the tempered yolk mixture into the remaining half and half mixture into the saucepan. This is kind of a fun little midway through cooking it. My kids enjoy this step for some reason. So whisking constantly, cook over medium heat. You need to whisk constantly because half and half can burn. So don't let it just sit there. Cook over medium heat until the mixture is thickened and registers 180 degrees. They say 30 to 90 seconds, but I would say it usually takes ours around like 5 or 6 minutes. So sometimes longer than that. I'll usually read an audiobook while I'm sitting there stirring because it takes so long. Off heat, whisk in butter, semi-sweet chocolate, and unsweetened chocolate until completely smooth and melted, and then stir in the vanilla. And then once the crust should be cool by this point, and you can put that into the cooled crust and spread it evenly. And then to top that off, make your own whipped cream, which I actually really love doing. It's so good. And for that, you have 1 cup of heavy cream chilled, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a pinch of salt. And you'll just combine all those ingredients, use a stand mixer, and just mix that until little soft peaks form and it looks a little bit more solid. But you don't want to whip it too good because because then it'll start to separate. So you kind of have to it almost looks like how would I describe it? Like little ocean waves as you're going around.
Yeah.
So
you definitely don't want to overdo it, but before the cream sets out too long,
yeah,
you must whip it.
You must whip it good.
I'm not sure if you answered this because you mentioned when I asked about where these recipes come from, you talked about the books.
Oh.
But how are these treats
How are these related? Okay. So in The Ghost of Kingston Estate, which is the second book in the Penn Files, Julie and Bella meet an old woman who is a former bakery owner. And she's like 90, but she still bakes all her own treats. So every time they go visit her, she has like all kinds of treats. So in The Ghost of Kingston Estate, they're all kind of Halloween related. And in this one, they're more like fall and Thanksgiving related because we're getting closer to Thanksgiving. So I don't think she's made any of these. I should do a little recipe little recipe collection of the ones that she's made. But some of them were complicated. It was like chocolate chip cranberry scones, which I have made before, but they're not like for people who just want to whip something up really easily, you know? So I was like, I don't know if I want to share some of those because they're a little more complicated. So, but, so the next one, the last one that I'm going to share is pumpkin cupcakes, which pumpkin is like one of my favorite recipes. So this makes 12 cupcakes. You need 1 cup of whole wheat flour, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda. we have a visitor. Where was I? Half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, an 1/8 teaspoon of ground allspice, 1/8 teaspoon of ground ginger, 3/4 cup canned unsweetened pumpkin puree, 7 tablespoons of sugar, a half a cup of vegetable oil, 2 large eggs, and 3 cups of cream cheese frosting, which I will get to. So you will heat your oven to 350 degrees while you're kind of whipping this up. If your oven takes like 10 minutes to preheat, this'll you should do the ingredients while that's how long ours takes. It's very annoying how long it takes to preheat. So
yeah, we're not satisfied with
we're
how long it
we're
takes.
not satisfied. I use reusable muffin. What are they called? Muffin cups.
Like the silicone.
Yeah, the silicone. So what I usually do with that is you can set out 12 of those and then spray it with a little bit of, I use avocado oil. So spray it with that to make sure it doesn't stick. But I recommend using those just because they are reusable and we don't have, the trash and waste of everything. So, so you'll line all of those onto the muffin tin thing. Whisk flour, cinnamon, baking powder, baking soda, salt, allspice, and ginger together in a large bowl. And then you'll whisk the pumpkin, sugar, oil, and eggs together in a second bowl until smooth. Using a rubber spatula, which I highly recommend, stir the pumpkin puree mixture into the flour mixture until combined. And then you'll divide the batter. See, it's like really easy to make these. Divide the batter evenly among the prepared muffin cups. And then you'll bake it for about 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know if you use a toothpick. I usually just use a fork, which means it has 4 holes in it instead of 1. But a fork, make sure it comes out clean, and that's when you know that the cupcakes are done. And then the cream cheese frosting is pretty easy as well. So they're fighting up there.
They're arguing.
Yeah. All right. So cream cheese frosting, you need 12 ounces of cream cheese, softened. You want to make sure it's softened because cream cheese is very hard to work with if it's like been in the refrigerator. So you'll probably just set it out for a couple of hours. 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter cut into 6 pieces and softened. 1.5 tablespoons of sour cream. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And 1.5 cups of confectioner's sugar. So using a stand mixer, you'll beat the cream cheese, butter, sour cream, vanilla, and salt on medium-high speed until smooth, about 2 minutes. And then you'll reduce the speed to medium-low and slowly add the sugar. And that's it. Just make sure that the cupcakes are cooled before you put the frosting on it. So that's what we've got. I know that was a lot. I'll share all of that like I said, in the comments so that you can have those and try them out. I think they're really good. So, all right. So now shall I read from the book?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I do not actually have a physical copy of this book yet, so I'm going to read from the ebook. So, which is also available. It's available in hardcover, softcover, and ebook. So I'm going to read from chapter 5. So
Can we bring it over here? That way you can read it kind of in the direction of the microphone.
Oh yeah, that would probably be good. So I'm reading it from my. Oh, it's cold. Okay. So this is, like I said, from about chapter 5. And I wanted to read from chapter 5 because it's one of the key moments when they reach the tree and they see something a little bit suspicious. So, in which Julian and Bella examine the tree. Julian and Bella biked to school every day, rain or shine. This morning, it looked like the sky would open up any second and dump buckets of rain on them. Mom and Dad had already left for work. That was part of the deal. Julian and Bella could always ride with Mom and Dad in the morning, but it meant they lost 45 minutes of sleep. Julian always chose the extra 45 minutes of sleep. Who wouldn't? But he might have to start checking the weather before he set his morning alarm. "Should we take umbrellas?" Bella said. She frowned at the sky. "And what? Tie them to the backs of our bikes?" Julian said. They'd had this conversation before, and Bella knew all about lightning and electricity, so Julian didn't have to tell her how dangerous it would be to tie umbrellas to the backs of their bikes during a storm. Julian already had a basket wired to the back of his bike, so he could carry his violin to and from school. "Yeah, maybe," Bella said. Maybe she was just being contradictory. Surely she couldn't. But Julian couldn't help saying, "And what if there's lightning? Umbrellas would be like a magnet on our backs." Bella squinted at the clouds, which hung low and gray-black, like she was trying to predict whether they might hide lightning bolts inside. Julian was pretty sure those were lightning bolt clouds. The jagged kind. The kind that aimed and found its mark. "We'll only be out there for 10 minutes, Bella said. "Well, I'm not chancing it," Julian said. "Do what you want." Frying a lightning strike, he thought. Bella had good ideas, but sometimes she didn't think them all the way through. Times like these, Julian was thankful for his anxiety. He bet lives were saved every day because of people who had anxiety. You could always imagine the worst-case scenarios because they lived in your brain and had no problem shouting anytime a golden opportunity, like a thunderstorm, presented itself. Excuse me, sorry. Finally, Bella said, "I guess we'll just have to bike fast." It wouldn't hurt to get to school a little earlier. Maybe Julian could sneak into one of the orchestra practice rooms. Did you just yawn at me?
No.
Just kidding.
You just ignore that stuff.
Maybe Julian could sneak into one of the orchestra practice rooms and run through his solo a little before the first bell rang. Even 5 minutes would be enough to warm up his fingers, convince himself he could do it. He'd practiced it for an hour last night, after warming up with some of the old music Papaw had given him. It was complicated music that would keep his fingers nimble, Papaw had said. He'd started with scales, moved to Papaw's complicated music, then attempted the less complicated solo. And he'd played it flawlessly, probably because he had no audience. Bella beat Julian to the shed where they kept their bikes. She had her helmet on and buckled before Julian had even walked through the door. "You're going to have to move faster than that, Julian," Bella said, dashing out of the shed. She hopped on her bike and pedaled away. Julian didn't catch up until she'd reached the tree at the crossroad, and that was only because she'd stopped. He breezed past her. "Now who's moving slow?" he shouted over his shoulder. "Stop, Julian," Bella called. "Come back." With a nervous glance at the sky, which looked like it might open up any second, Julian braked and turned around. He didn't want to backpedal, so he said, "What?" "The tree." She pointed. The crossroad tree was a spooky sight, but that wasn't so unusual. It had a slit in the trunk that looked big enough for a person to slip through. If you looked at it the right way, you could imagine the slit as a gaping mouth, hung sideways. Fog settled around it, and the gray-brown, gnarled, crooked branches sagged. Their tips nearly touched the ground. It was taller and wider than he remembered. All kinds of things could hide in that tree cover, and Julian wasn't about to explore what those things might be. Too many dark shadows, and shadows hid scary things. As if the place didn't already give off vibes of, "You're probably going to die there." You're probably going to die here. There was also an old, run-down, abandoned convenience store about half a football field away, which was reason number 4 billion that Julian didn't like lingering at the crossroad. Sorry, man. Bella plucked off a leaf, which was long and curly. Half of it was green, and half was a browning yellow, same as most trees in Texas this time of year. A drop of rain splattered on Julian's nose. They needed to hurry, or they'd have to find shelter inside that tangled mess. No, thank you. Come on, Bella, Julian said. We need to get to school. Do you have your camera? She said. Like Julian would bring his camera on a day the clouds looked like this. No, dummy, he said, and he immediately felt bad for calling her a dummy. But Bella didn't seem to notice. She was still squinting at the tree. Does it look different to you? Bella said. Not really. It looks sadder. Bella reached out to touch one of the drooping branches. Something else reached out too. Julian squinted. It looked like a hand. Bella, Julian shouted, get away from the tree. For once in her life, Bella listened to Julian. She stepped away, and whatever Julian had seen disappeared. Maybe he'd seen nothing. Bella swung around to Julian and raced her bike to where he stood. What did you see? She said. What did you see, Julian? Julian stared hard at the tree. 2 more raindrops splashed on his right ear, then the back of his neck. They were ice cold. Nothing, he said. We need to go. He didn't want to get caught in a cold rain and freeze the rest of the day. He also didn't want to think about what he had or hadn't seen. You did see something, Bella said. I can tell by the look on your face. She didn't look scared. She looked delighted. And the tree does look different, she added. She glanced back over her shoulder. Something's going on. We haven't had rain in a while, Julian said. Maybe it's thirsty. You know it's more than that, Julian. He didn't want to, but she was right. He did. Even if his eyes hadn't really seen what he thought he'd seen, he'd felt the cold that wrapped around the tree. He'd noticed the fog. It was impossible not to notice when they passed the tree every day. I bet there's a ghost, Bella said, tied to the tree. Her eyes shone like 2 beams of blue in the darkening morning. I can't wait to hear that story. Julian didn't share her enthusiasm. He didn't intend on finding out any more about that tree. They had plenty of room to pass it on the other side of the street. No worries, he told himself. Forget it. Bella left him at the middle school and locked her bike at the elementary school rack. She waved and disappeared through the doors. Julian had just stepped through his own school's doors when the sky's curtain finally opened. A large crack of thunder welcomed him into the hall. And that's where I'll stop.
All right. I really love the line that talks about the anxiety being actually like a superpower.
Yeah.
In a way.
That's how I feel.
Kind of a more of a benefit to society. Mm-hmm. So
I feel like we were the ones who, people with anxiety were the ones who kept people from getting killed way back when.
Yeah, it's so
like, but what about?
It's kind of an affirming message, I think, for people with anxiety who are, I think, often told,
just stop worrying.
Stop worrying.
Yeah.
Your anxiety is a negative thing, So.
I mean, I did say I put a lot of me into him too, so. He is a kid with anxiety. I probably should have mentioned that before, but.
All right. So what else do we have on?
Well, the last thing
agenda?
on the list is playing the violin. So.
Are you really going to do this?
Yeah, I'm kind of chickening out because I feel like I would need to play a song, and I'm not sure that I can pull it off. Like, I'm going to prove myself to be like a terrible musician because I don't know how to do it. I probably should have just cheated and practiced before now, huh?
Maybe. Well, let's see if we have any violin players out there watching, and you see Rachel doing, like, is she holding it correctly? All of that. All right, give us a second, because I want to say something real quick.
I've never done this before. This is kind of embarrassing.
So
I am publicly humiliating myself.
No, it's fine. So I wanted to say real quick, I just realized that, and this is completely my fault, on the YouTube on the YouTube channel, the stream was fine. Everything was, streaming the way that it was supposed to. But on the Facebook page, for some reason, when the stream began, it was set to private.
Oh,
And
no.
so I just now was able to set it live. Fortunately, everything that we've done up to this point is available. So you're absolutely welcome to watch back if you're just joining us now on Facebook.
Aw, that's too
So yeah. Also, if you're just joining us, if you have any questions, we are going to do a quick Q&A time to take any questions that might have come in after the violin attempt. So feel free to drop those in the comments. But yeah, I wanted to mention that real quick. We discussed earlier. We discussed
Am I even supposed to
several
put my
several
phone?
different questions about the book, but it's you can ask those same questions again. That's totally fine. I don't think Rachel's gonna get tired of talking about her book. So
Or writing or anything like that.
all right, you ready to do this?
I'm very out of my league here.
I'm gonna bring the volume down just a little bit so that we don't.
How am I even supposed to put my chin, like this chin rest? Is it for a kid or is it for me? Okay. Yeah, that sounds awful. I think there's something wrong with this violin.
Hey, can I trade you? Let me see. All right, so
Yeah, he knows how to play it, so.
I don't know. Is it? Oops. And you do the thing. I'm sorry because I'm terrible too, but I had Jay actually show me.
Oh, you cheated.
Jay showed me because our oldest son Jay plays the violin. He showed me how you're supposed to do it. I'm still doing it wrong, and this is also probably collectively about a month's worth of practice, and I can do. All right. You want to give it another go?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So
We're
what
gonna-
you gotta do is you gotta let the string sit at a 90-degree angle to, or let the bow sit at a 90-degree angle to the string. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I got that.
And then give it just a good. Don't be gentle with it. Don't be shy. Yeah, there you go. Let it make a sound.
I got 2 notes on it. Yeah.
We were professional musicians at one time.
We were. But never the violin. I should have learned the violin. We really were. We used to be really good. Maybe one of these times we can do a live thing.
I wasn't making a face.
Thanks, Ben.
No, I wasn't making a face.
I'm not gonna try it again. It's gonna hurt people's ears. So.
No, that was very good.
All right, we got it.
For a first try, it made a sound. That was kind of the interesting thing. We went to the first band concert for our twins, who they're the first of our children who are playing like in a band. Jay was orchestra, obviously.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting because the concert wasn't them like playing a bunch of songs. It was, here are the things that we do in practice for first time musicians, and it was getting them to play their mouthpieces with proper technique, getting them to sit the right way so that they can, take in enough air. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
All of that to say, no matter how much experience you have, especially if it's an instrument with mechanics that you've never used before, like making a sound at all that's even somewhat pleasant is actually a pretty big accomplishment. So.
I will also say this book, I used some of my experience from band to put into this book as far as practice is concerned. I did a lot of practicing when I was in band, and I was actually I was really good at the clarinet, and I was very meticulous about the way that I practiced. So if kids are interested in like how to practice an instrument well, I kind of lay that out in the book. So
nice.
There you go.
All right. Well, we do have a couple of questions. If you want to go ahead and jump into the Q&A. Yeah. It's from our friend Alana. Says, do you have a playlist you like to listen to when you write?
So this is an interesting question because sometimes I listen to music and sometimes I don't. And I think it kind of depends on the story for me. So a lot of my young adult stories, I'll listen to like more modern day hits and pop, because a lot of it kind of puts me into that mood of first love and all of that. Middle grade stuff, sometimes I'll listen to instrumental music, so like movie scores and stuff like that. But a lot of times with middle grade writing, I'll just have it be super quiet. And I don't know why that is. Sometimes I'll listen to music before I start writing, and then it kind of gets me into a particular mood. I'd like to say I listened to Halloween music during this one, but I'm not a big fan of Halloween music anyway.
No?
Some of it's okay.
No, yeah, I got a request from the twins the other day for spooky, scary skeletons.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
That kind of...
But it like gets in your head. Maybe I don't like it because we've only heard the Kids Bop version of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so some of that I don't enjoy. But I will say that the different music styles... Oh, were you about to ask that question?
Yeah, I was going to bring it in. So this was actually kind of a two-parter. So the other question was, do different music styles influence the mood of your story?
Absolutely, yeah. There's what is it? Andy Grammer, I think, sings the one, I'm not giving up, giving up, no, not me.
Oh yeah, so it's like a...
So that one's like a... I actually,
empowering...
I created a playlist for a particular young adult book where that is like the main focus, because it puts me in a mood of like, there's this girl who had a lot of problems, and she's grateful to the people in her life who aren't giving up on her, because she's not giving up on herself either. And so I'm just like, a lot of times when I listen to music, there was another one today when I was out running, I was listening to music, and there was a song that I was like, oh, this one would make a great book, you know, not because I'm using their words or whatever, but just the pictures that it creates in my mind. So I do take a lot of inspiration from music, probably because music is a big part of our lives, and it was a big part of our lives before I started pursuing publishing and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, we're actually having a meeting about your next traditional published book that's coming out, and talking about different marketing ideas. And one of them that we used for the first one was a playlist.
Because it's in the 90s, and the 90s music is like wonderful. We were actually listening to it this morning stuff. For like hours. So yeah.
So speaking of this book, well, actually, so there's another question. I'm going to get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. There's another question that you actually had listed, that I was curious about. I'll get to that in a second though, because we just had another question coming from Alana. Alana asks, oh, this is a great question. Do you find signs that say your mom in windows inspiring while you run? So you run in our neighborhood. Yeah. And there is a house.
It's Alana's house.
That's got a window facing the main street.
Yeah.
And in the window is a sign that says, it's mom. Capital U, capital R, and then mom.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me laugh every time I'm usually like finishing up my run when I see it. But I do remember the first time I saw it, and I think I was finishing it was like a 14-mile run or something. And I was so tired, and I saw that sign, and I was like, oh, it's only like, a quarter home. And it invigorated me because I was laughing.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
your
just,
mom can do it. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think a lot of times when I'm driving down that street, either leaving for something or coming home, sometimes you just find yourself like you're coming home from something and it's like, oh, I'm going home, and it's like whatever fun thing you were doing is over, and you're just kind of coming down from that.
But your mom.
Yeah, or maybe you're leaving and you got to go do something, and it's like, oh, I've got to run these errands, and it's kind of like serious, and it just kind of adds some levity to your day.
Mm-hmm.
That that makes life easier, and so I just, for whoever put that in the window, I think it's very thoughtful, and I have a lot of gratitude.
Yeah.
So, all right. You had the question, and I had no, like, there was no context for this yet.
Oh, it was one of our kids asked me this. Are you talking about the treats
okay.
one?
Yeah. How does Julian not get sick from eating all those treats? So first of all, explain.
Well, so I said
Julian was getting into the treats?
No.
Oh,
so
okay.
when Julian and Bella go visit their friend who was a former baker, had a former bakery.
Oh, those are the treats you're talking about.
Yeah, she
Okay.
makes all kinds of treats for them, but he'll eat like 7 cookies or 4 cupcakes or because they're so good.
Yeah. I guess I'm the person in the family who
I mean, there's a little bit of you.
eat that quantity of...
They've said things about their dad. Julian and Bella have said things about their dad that our sons are like, that's daddy. So, yeah, you're in this book too.
Related to treats?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I do like
Yeah.
treats a lot.
How do you not get sick after 4 cupcakes?
I really don't know. Like, even really rich... That's, we were talking about the pie earlier.
Yeah.
I could eat quite a bit of that pie and not get sick. I think I'm just built different.
I can't do it.
All right. I don't know. I don't think we've got any more questions. But I want to give you an opportunity here just to let folks know where they can get the book.
Yeah.
Where are the first 2 books available? Also, is there something over on your chair that you...
Oh, I forgot about all this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I have merchandise on my website. There are these beanie caps, which this is probably my favorite. Whoops.
Yeah.
Went the wrong way.
I don't know if we can kind of lean in toward the camera a little bit to give them... It gets a little bit blurry if you get too close.
It's a little ghost
So
on a skateboard.
yeah, it's a ghost on a skateboard.
So the tagline behind that is... Can they see?
Yeah.
Do what you're afraid to do. So this is a ghost like coming. I can't get the.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's a ghost coming up to a microphone, to sing, and then there's another design that's the ghost on the skateboard. I also have a mug, and then I have a hoodie, which is also one of my favorites. I love hoodies. So this one has a ghost on a skateboard too. So. You can see that. There we go.
Yeah.
Super cool. It's all on my store, so I think it's still the link. We can put the link in the chat.
Yeah, we'll put it in the chat. If you go to racheltolson.com, in the main navigation, there's a link that will take you to the store, and it shows it's got several new items in there with merchandise related to this book series.
Yeah, this book series.
Maybe I need to design one that's a ghost playing the violin.
Yeah. There aren't a lot of people who play the violin probably, but it's just my favorite.
Yeah, it's a very cool hat.
Yeah. They come in different colors too. I just, I like pink.
All right. So, yeah, so that's the merch. And then what about the books?
So the books are all available. Paperback and softcover are available on Amazon. And then if you're like a librarian or something, they're available on Ingram Spark as well. And then ebook is available anywhere you would buy ebooks, so Apple Books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any of those places. So, yep.
All right. Go check it out. Definitely a great story, worth a read.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, sorry about the technical difficulties, not getting it out on Facebook sooner, but if you're watching the replay, we're going to be checking back on these. So if you have any questions that we didn't cover, you can feel free to leave a comment and ask those, and Rachel's going to be checking up on it, and
Yeah.
we'll be happy to hop in and respond to those. So thanks again, and
Thank you.
congratulations
Thank you.
on the launch of your book.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.